We're going to be talking about the AMP crisis and what can be done about it on this episode of Taking Off Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Taking Off Podcast. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Christy Wong.
All right, Christy, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. We've had other episodes where we've talked about the AMP crisis. And specifically what I'm talking about is that my AMP is retiring. And I'm having a lot of trouble finding people and places to get my plane worked on in general aviation.
Yeah.
And are you seeing the same thing with the Wong Warrior?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of AMPs that I have helped me with different things, just based on what I need. But yeah, finding a good AMP in the area that's available is really hard, especially as I think about doing the avionics upgrades in the Warrior.
Right.
That's kind of a struggle because the wait list right now is months and months out. Yes,
it is. And you know, as I've talked to other plane owners around the country, it is a crisis. They are having trouble finding AMPs. So we are fortunate enough I was able to connect with James Spearman, who has his own mechanic shop in Knoxville, Tennessee. And James is a Air Force pilot flying the KC-130 as well as a lot of other things. James, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Dan and Christy. Happy to be here. I do fly the KC-135, the refueler.
Did I say 130?
Oh, good.
I'm thinking of the AC-130, which is really cool too. But no, the KC-135
also
is what I meant.
Awesome plane.
Yeah, so
all of them are good, right?
Well, before we jump into the AMP side of things, because it's interesting to me is, first of all, that you're an AMP/IA, but also you're a KC-135 pilot. Tell us about yourself, how you got into flying.
Yeah, so my dad took me to an air show back when I was young, and he always told me stories about my grandfather. My grandfather was a World War II aviator, and he flew B-25s and then the B-36 and the B-52s all the way through Vietnam. And so I heard stories about him. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him, but saw the pictures of airplanes. And when my dad took me to a general aviation fly-in in Orlando, that was it. You know, I was in middle school, and I was like, you know, these things are pretty cool. I don't know exactly how this is going to pan out, but airplanes are going to be involved.
Well, how did you get into the Air Force? Did you go to the Air Force Academy? Did you go through ROTC? What was your route?
Yeah, so I went to Middle Tennessee State University, the aerospace maintenance program there, similar to Purdue, and Embry-Riddle. They've got a similar program. But
you know, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I think Chelsea Smith, that's where she went, and she did the same program.
Interesting.
I know that Chelsea went to a school in Tennessee that offered a airplane maintenance degree.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that name's familiar.
Do you know Chelsea from Aviation 101, Josh Flowers?
You know, that name's familiar. I'm not sure exactly.
Well,
Maybe
I'll have to connect you guys. I have to find out if it's Middle Tennessee State. But okay, sorry to interrupt. But
great.
So you were in the program at Middle Tennessee State.
Yep, and at the exact same time, I joined the Air Force National Guard, enlisted as a mechanic, and so I was going to school to get my AMP and serving the United States Air Force in a part-time capacity as a mechanic, and so did that. Deployed twice as a crew chief on the same aircraft, the KC-135. And then I got my degree and kept scratching at the door. I knew I wanted to be an Air Force aviator, and that was really an excellent path to get there. And shout out to kids that want to be an Air Force pilot. You know, there's a lot of paths to get there, and that really is a good one. The Air Force really likes to have their pilots be mechanics as well. But anyways, got my degree and kept scratching at the door and let them know that if they sent me to Air Force pilot training, you know, they'd have to drag me out of the cockpit kicking and screaming because I was going to make it no matter what. And luckily for me, I made it. So
What did you start off flying in the Air Force?
T6.
Okay.
The Texan 2?
So, yep, that's the Texan 2. It's the it's got 1,000 horsepower, PT6 on the front of it, tandem aircraft.
It's exactly what you want to learn in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing like lining up and I flew a lot of GA. I already had my private pilot's license before I went there, but they toss you in a 1,000 horsepower, two-seater. It's definitely awesome. It's eye-opening.
What's it like flying the KC-135?
The KC-135 is I would say anyone that has flown that aircraft knows that that's a pilot's aircraft. It can definitely kick your butt. On any given day, I've seen the best pilots that I've thought I've ever flown with. I mean, they just had a bad day. Not like a bad day, an incident happened or something, but it really made them work to get an awesome landing or maintain, airspeed and altitude, stuff like that. And there's a lot of hand flying that goes with it, including, we'll go out and shoot touch and goes in an airliner essentially. And then we've got to fly up to altitude, refuel other aircraft, and maintain, airspeed and altitude as stable as we can for the receiver, with the autopilot off frequently.
Oh, that's interesting. So what I find interesting is you go from that. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, you're dealing with 4 engines to manage that are non-FADEC controlled. So they are, they've got a mind of their own.
Okay,
you gotta make them do it.
No, that's really interesting. And I was saying, like, what I find really interesting is how in the world did you go from that to owning a mechanic shop? How do you go from KC-135 pilot to, I'm going to go open up my own shop?
Yeah, I would say Air Force. I will say that I've always kind of had a entrepreneurial bug about me. Kind of my dad, my grandfather did too. But I always wanted to give it a shot in whatever it was. And I thought that Air Force pilot training really prepared me. Great to be an Air Force pilot, but also to be an entrepreneur. I mean, every day you walk in, your dreams on the line. And your friends around you are going home because they weren't good enough. And so I knew I wanted to do it. It's just the timing. And so I already had my A&P, and at this point, I'm just a professional junkie, aviation junkie. So I looked at a few other businesses that were for sale, one landscape and froyo, stuff like that. And I was like, that just, I'll do it if that's my only options. But then one of the shops that I used to work for as an A&P, the owner had, he was ready to retire. And so I was like, let's do it. Let's see if we can make this happen. And we purchased the shop, and it was really just him at the time with a few helpers. And we've grown it to, at the time, I think their best year, really was only over $100,000. And now we've got, 8 full-time A&Ps. 4 of us have IAs, and over 100 years of experience combined on the shop floor, working on some of the best aircraft that we can find around. So.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the A&P shortage, because I've actually looked at obtaining an A&P certification because I just find it really cool. Plus, I'd like to be able to work on my airplane. But I feel like it's actually more restrictive than getting a pilot certificate in a lot of ways.
It's definitely it's intensive. So it's just time intensive too. So I get some people will call and they'll say, hey, how can I do this? And oftentimes people try to go work as an apprentice in a shop. I mean, you have to be really committed to do that. You're doing it for 3 years to even apply. I think it's 36 months. Don't go quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 30 or 36 months. You need to work under the direct supervision of another A&P, to even apply to go take the test. If you do it with a tech school, that's probably the quickest way, and that takes 2 years.
And it's full time.
Where
It's full
Yeah,
time
full
because
time.
I've looked.
Where you can go to ATP or other pilot schools, and you can crank your pilot ratings out really fast.
Right. Well, not only can you crank out those ratings, but like I remember when I was learning to fly, I worked full time, but I would fly before work, after work, on the weekends. And as an AMP, like if you want to get your certification, you can't necessarily do it like that.
Right. Yeah. It's I would say it's difficult, and so right now, going to Oshkosh, they're beating it like a drum, and same with Sun and Fun. They're talking about it at seminars. There's a huge generation that's where most of the knowledge is, and they're retiring, and it takes a long time to replace them, and there's none in the pipeline, or very little in the pipeline, and so there we are, the shortage.
Well, you have 8 in your shop. That's amazing. How did you attract and hold 8 A&Ps at your shop?
Yeah, so luckily for me, when I was going to school and serving as a crew chief, I was also working. I got my A&P and I started working in shops in my area, and then most notably Cirrus Aircraft. And I worked there while I was waiting to go to pilot training, and met really awesome people. So I had met a lot of people in the industry. And when I opened my shop and we got some traction, I was really able to get a couple of those friends to come along. And then when you have a good reputation, and I would say this is in any business, if the employees are happy and they enjoy what they're doing, they'll tell their friends, and that, hey, it's cool to work here. And for the most part now, it's almost kind of easy. We'll get a little bit behind, and I'll say, does anybody know anyone? And they're like, oh yeah. And so that the culture definitely helps, but also this isn't 3 years ago. Almost 3 to 5 years ago, I know some of the best mechanics I knew were making $25, $26 an hour.
Right.
And that's just not the case anymore. And I would say the old school mindset in owners that own maintenance shops, that's kind of where they're still, like, well, mechanics grow on trees and we can find them anywhere. And they're only worth $26 an hour. It's like, okay, well, good luck. So, I mean, nowadays you just, to maintain and get guys, we have to offer great benefits. We offer healthcare, 401k, great PTO plan. And we're paying as good or as better than anyone else can find, right now. So
yeah, it's kind of like the pilot shortage. Your skill set becomes a real commodity. Like you are in high demand, and they have to raise the bar, for pay and everything else.
Well, and I think that we're going to see, as airplane owners, if we haven't already, is that our maintenance cost is going to rise and increase. And I think that it has to, because we need to pay the mechanics more. I think that that's one of the solutions to the A&P shortage.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think
nobody wants to hear that, but
nobody wants to hear it. But the issue is that the A&P mechanics are making less than the Ford mechanic at the local shop. I mean, it's crazy.
You're right. There's a local. Well, there for a while, mechanic shops were only $85 an hour was a very common shop rate for decades. And then, it's funny, there's a small engine repair down the road from me, and they're charging $180, and they work on weed eaters.
Wow.
And then you go to like Toyota, and they're at $210.
And you've got all these plane owners that are getting pissed off at having to pay $95 an hour.
Yeah, it is that relationship and how you handle that is also going to be how many of those customers you retain. You do have to do it with empathy, because in some cases it is kind of a thankless job, right? When you pay me good money to inspect your plane, I better be doing a really, really good job of going through that plane with a fine-tooth comb so you know exactly where it is. And when I do my best job, we typically find more things. That's not forcing you to do all of them, but it's, hey, you might have a squawk list that's significantly longer because the experience level, the guys in the shop, and we're doing really good maintenance. But you see how that can be construed. Well, you're just trying to get us for everything you can. It's like, well, no, I'm not. You don't have to do everything on this. I'm just showing you exactly where this plane is because you paid me money to look at it, and we looked at it.
All right. Well, with 8 mechanics on staff at your company, I know that so many other places that I've looked into are just, like Christy said earlier, months and months, backed up. Where are you guys at in that regard?
We're with 8 mechanics, and we're open 7 days a week. We typically have week to week.
Nice.
So, and that's part of why I'm going out and going on podcasts, doing marketing. We market with Flying Magazine and other places, mainly because they stay on top of it.
Wow. Okay.
I got to go out.
Well, for you guys listening to this podcast, if you own a plane, you've felt the pain of trying to find a place. That's amazing that you can get in right now and get it looked at. So, wow. I'd be surprised if you don't get calls.
We do have customers flying in as far as South Florida, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Wyoming, and we're in East Tennessee. Wyoming, I never thought that would happen, but they flew out, and if somebody does that, we're going to help as much as we can with the logistics. McGee Tyson is the closest airport, and we're happy to ferry get people there, or even closer places in the southeastern region. We'll ferry the plane ourselves.
Well, I'm in North Texas. I'd have no problem flying my 210 out to East Tennessee for work. What about you, Christy, and the Wong Warrior? Would you take that trip?
It depends on what the need was.
Well, yeah, an oil change.
Probably not for an oil change, yeah. But if it was substantial work and they were the only place that could get me in, then yeah, absolutely.
You'd take that trip in the Wong Warrior.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have flown the Warrior to like Ohio before, and Wisconsin and all over the place.
You were saying something, James?
Yeah. And for right now, for the most part, I'm offering, hey, if you fly to us, we'll get this plane done in 14 days or less. And then under certain planes, we're 14 days or less, or we'll pay you, is kind of where our market is going. So
do you guys do avionics as well, or just like engine and airframe?
Yeah, we do avionics. We're in Avidyne, Dynon, Aspen, and Electro Air does the electronic ignitions, but we're those dealers. And did I say Aspen? Yeah,
you did.
So
which I very well could be doing a deal with Aspen, so maybe I need to bring Lola out to you for that.
Yep. At least let me make that estimate for you.
Yeah. So you said electronic ignition. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So everyone has had probably, if you've owned an airplane, you've had trouble with magnetos. And if you haven't yet, you probably will. And for the most part, that manifests right as you're rolling down the taxiway and you do your run up and one mag doesn't pass, right? And then you're thinking in your get home-itis is kind of like, man, well, I've got 2. And then you think about, well, what's the report going to read? And you're like, well, dang it. Okay. I can't take off with just 1 mag. So you taxi back and hopefully that's not at somewhere you've never been. So magnetos are really 50s and 60s technology,
right.
Just like really the engine itself. And what Electro Air is doing is bringing the engine into the 21st century. The magneto, it's unreliable and it has very low energy. And so a lot of engines have to have top overhauls halfway through their life frequently because the the magnetos are not strong enough to give off a spark to burn the entire air fuel mixture inside the cylinder. And so the exhaust valve opens and it's still combusting as it leaves the chamber, and it's leaving behind deposits and carbon and lead. And that typically, all those deposits will clog up your exhaust valve to cause low compressions, or it'll cause excessive oil consumption because your oil control rings begin to lock up due to the carbon and lead deposits. And it's simply to the fact that the ignition system isn't strong enough to get rid of all of those deposits. ElectroAir offers an electronic ignition that offers a longer, hotter, and more powerful spark that burns the entire air fuel mixture inside the combustion chamber. What this results in is higher performance that you can tell and feel in the seat, lower fuel consumption, and less long-term overall maintenance because you're not having to send them off every 500 hours.
Wow.
It'll last the length of the engine, essentially, TBO.
And it's kinder on the engine. Okay, so for my Cessna 210, is that simply I fly out and you can put it in, or is there like an STC, a 337, or is it just I can put it in a certified?
Yeah, it's a STC'd, and for the most part, they're on almost every engine that you can put in an airplane. So we haven't ran into any limitations on installing them.
Oh, okay.
We can have them in about a week. So it is a little bit bigger of a job than just like taking off magnetos and putting it in. It's you're replacing it with not only the magneto, but you have to install a computer that runs it, coil packs like your car, and a switch panel that will give you push button start from that out. So it's a really neat system, and it provides easier to start in really all conditions.
All right. Here's the big question though: is how much does one of those systems cost?
Yeah. So for the most part, it depends on each airframe. I would recommend, if somebody's interested, to reach out and I can build an estimate for them. You're looking from the $5,000 to $10,000 range, which sounds a lot right off the tip of the tongue. But when you think about a top overhaul that you could save,
oh yeah,
right, all cylinders, it's significant. What fuel savings? Yeah, sure. I wouldn't justify the whole install just based off of fuel savings, but I would say the long-term overall health of the engine is worth it. And we're fixing to release another kind of email campaign showing a direct comparison of bore scope inspections of, hey, here's your cylinder without ElectroAir, here's it with it. And you can see before there's all these, caked up lead along the top of the cylinder. And after about 50 hours, it's gone. And it's a cleaned out cylinder,
Wow.
which is so.
Okay. James, if people do want to reach out to you to get that estimate or to get some service scheduled, what's the best way to do that, to contact you?
Yeah, they can go to our website at spearmanaircraft.com, or they can call our direct line at 865-366-1449.
All right, awesome. Okay, we'll definitely, and also for those watching on YouTube to the podcast, we'll put a link in the description below. James, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet both y'all, and I look forward to working with y'all in the future. So if you'd like me to be on the show or anytime, just reach out.
Oh,
I appreciate
sure.
y'all very much.
Sounds good.
All right. So, and thank you guys for watching and listening, since this is a podcast. And thank you to our sponsors like Colton Mortgage, coltontakingoff.com for your residential mortgage need. Also, we have a new sponsor, Abington Watches. Christy's wearing the
Amelia.
Amelia. So, Abington created these watches. because she couldn't find an aviation watch for her. She's a pilot as well. We love our sponsors because they're like all pilots. And like Marshall Protective Services, run by a pilot, mpsprotects.com. Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights. Guess what?
Also a pilot.
Also a pilot. 67 Designs, the best camera mounts and iPhone mounts and tablets for your plane, is run by
A pilot.
He actually flies a Cirrus. So, So a pilot. I want to make sure that's clear. And ClemensInsurance.net. Jerry has saved me a lot of money on my insurance. So check out ClemensInsurance.net. Did I miss anybody?
Flying Eyes.
Flying Eyes. Use our discount code at flyingeyesoptics.com. Our discount code is taking off. All caps, one word, for 10% off. So thank you guys very much, Christy. It's always a pleasure to have you co-hosting this with me.
As always.
As always, we'll see you guys next time on the Taking Off podcast.